guys, welcome back to Ambiguity. It's Mondays with Ty, and today's subject is mental health and being trans. So, obviously, I'm not a professional, I'm not an expert on the subject, so I thought I would track down somebody who knows a few things about transgender issues and mental health. Um, she is a psychologist, and she actually runs a transgender support group and has also been involved in putting together seminars on LGBT healthcare. And that person is my wife, Sandy. Alright, so what I thought I'd do is kind of do a little Q&A session with you.
Okay.
That sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the first question is being transgender a mental illness?
Actually, there's been a lot of debate about this very question over the years. It used to be technically considered a mental illness. It was called gender identity disorder. But a few years ago, those standards changed, and now the official diagnosis is gender dysphoria, which essentially it states that being transgender in and of itself is not a mental health diagnosis or illness, but the dysphoria, the depression that often accompanies having a body that's inconsistent with your gender identity is what's considered the problem, and often is the focus of mental health treatment.
Right. Okay. That answers that question. Second question. Are there any mental illnesses that are associated with being transgender?
There's really not a whole lot of research on this topic yet, because there isn't a lot of research in general in the transgender population, but there are some studies that show a higher rate of various illnesses in the transgender population, primarily things like depression and anxiety disorders. But when you really dive deep into that research and you look at different variables, what has been found is that in states, for example, where there are legal protections for discrimination against people who are transgender, the rates of mental health diagnoses like depression and anxiety are actually no different than the general population. But in states that do not have those legal protections against discrimination, the rates of depression and anxiety disorders is higher. And so that suggests that the problem isn't with being transgender. The problem is living a life that's essentially akin to being an oppressed minority. So
Right.
people who have trouble maintaining employment, maintaining housing, having stable incomes because of discrimination tend to have higher rates of mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, and that being transgender is no different in that respect.
Okay. Last question.
Okay.
Right. Should transgender people receive counseling prior to or during transition?
I think that this type of question has to be answered on a case-by-case basis. For some people, the counseling, I think, is essential to help them realize who they are, because it's not something that people always recognize on their own. They know something's wrong, but they don't really know what's wrong, and so counseling can help you figure that out. For other people, counseling is really beneficial in helping them deal with all of the stress associated with coming out and potential transition. Obviously, people risk rejection from family, from friends, from society in general, and having a support person to be able to turn to going through that process can be very helpful. So I don't think it should be required, but I do think it should be encouraged because most people benefit from support, and if you don't have much to start with and you try to tackle the transition on your own, it might be overwhelming.
Right. Okay. So I think we covered a lot about mental health and being trans, don't you think?
I do.
And so I think that's all I'm going to say. All Sandy's going to say, I think, for this week. I want to thank my wife, Sandy,
You're
for
welcome.
answering those questions, and I will talk to you guys next week. All right. See ya. Bye.